You ever get the feeling that those in charge have no clue what's going on? Do you ever get the sense that the competence and safety offered to us by those in power is more illusion than it is real? I think if you've ever felt this way, the comedy stylings of the Marx Brothers might be a perfect fit. The term I think of when I watch one of their films is, "The Emperor has no clothes." I'll get into why that is in a minute. The worlds they exist in are minute simulacrums of our own. The people who exist in them exist like we do, playing the roles that we play, but playing them without the nuanced details of real life to cloudy their place. They're almost perfect representations of hierarchy, and the notches we occupy within said hierarchies. The Marx Brothers, Harpo, Chico, and Groucho, and to a lesser extent Zeppo, then are like a wrecking ball, shattering the structure of this world, or sometimes are like trickster sprites or deities, poking into this contained reality, using its own rigidness to make a mockery of it from within. It's because of this playfulness, because of this manic chaos within a mannered big studio production that the Marx Brothers comedy has aged so well. Yes, the cleverness is great, but most comedy of this era was clever. Laurel and Hardy, Jack Benny, Abbott, and Costello are all examples of that. I think what gives the Marx Brothers a more modern place in the comedy lexicon is the manic energy which cradles that cleverness. In some cases, this energy borders on being hostile. It bubbles over the edges, splashing at our feet as we watch. This hostility seems to be aimed mostly at the stuffy structure of convention, a sort of sprawling out and thrashing against the narrow cubbyhole walls of civilization, which always seem to be tightening toward the flanks of our collective id, threatening to box it up and stash it away in the attic or basement, while the party, mannered and polite, continues without distraction or incident on the main floor. The Marx Brothers have many classics. I tend to be a fan of the more stripped-down earlier films, as their lack of scruples, relatability, or moral compass is, frankly, part of the fun. Animal Crackers, Monkey Business, and Horse Feathers are all great. But the best of these, the crowning achievement of this quadrilogy of zoological hijinks, is Duck Soup. Duck Soup is both the most stripped down of these, with it being devoid of any love subplot or extended musical interludes, while at the same time being the most grand, its plot covering topics such as statecraft, war, espionage, propaganda, commerce, and authority. It does this through the fictional nation-state of Fredonia, a country which seems to be modeled after a hybrid of America and countries in Western Europe. The specifics of Fredonia, its demographics, its culture, its religion, don't really matter. All that matters is that it could be any functioning state. The leader of Fredonia, and the closest things this movie has to a main character, is Rufus T. Firefly, played by Groucho Marx. Firefly serves as both a representation of authoritative incompetence, but also as an anarchist saboteur within the state, not so much within the plot itself, but because of the structure of the jokes. This is typical for Groucho as he inhabits his characters, while also periodically stepping outside of them for the sake of humor in all Marx Brothers films. He's both there to laugh at and there to laugh with, and the dividing line between each is purposefully kept vague or even irrelevant at all times. Likewise, Harpo and Chico Marx play spies for the neighboring and rival country of Sylvania. Again, we laugh at them and their failures and misunderstandings, while also laughing with them as they gum up the works of both local bureaucracy and of international intrigue. The obvious question of why it is they're allowed to continue these apparently important operations, given their consistent incompetence and persistent abrasiveness, is part of the point. Their incompetence can't be addressed because the state of Sylvania itself is governed by slightly less severe forms of incompetence. It's a problem which feeds into itself, but Harpo and Chico's characters, pushing this to its logical extreme, are basically in on the joke. The world itself, and Fredonia and Sylvania within it, also happens to be incompetent, hence why it supports such incoherent nations so easily. I've seen this movie a million times, and I still somehow overlook the fact that Harpo and Chico are fighting on the side of Fredonia at the end. It makes no sense, but the fact that it's so easy to overlook is a testament to the film's chaos, where rather than the plot and humor working in conjunction with one another, the humor is at war with the plot. It's almost as if the plot is a skin which the humor is bursting out of. The quote-unquote straight men and women of the film are so hapless, entertaining the whims of these trickster spirits amongst them to absurd degrees, that the satire almost writes itself. Very little in a Marx Brothers film feels pointed. Unlike To Be or Not to Be or Blazing Saddles, where the satire is carefully fitted within the films through its jokes, Duck Soup, its very haphazard structure itself, is the satire. The chaos of the film fits the chaos of the things it's criticizing. In most films, the distrust between these two states and the espionage which follows would usually be the impetus for the Great War set piece at the end. In this film, all of that is irrelevant, as the war occurs as consequence for something as small as a random flush of paranoia. The humor of seeing a world leader slapped in his face, the sudden indignity of it, and the fact that we're rarely exposed to such a visual, was almost certainly well understood by those on set at the time. But rather than being purely cathartic, this only serves as catalyst for a horrible war. The lightness of touch then, and the high spirits with which war is treated, not just by the characters but by the tone of the film itself, is also shocking. The movie itself is obviously anti-war, but its way of being anti-war by turning the hijinks of war up to 11 is about as subversive as social commentary gets. I'm only half joking when I say this section is as harrowing as Come and See. It might not be as viscerally disturbing to witness, but the implications of it, especially when we look at the world around us even now, are dark. The destruction, the mechanized hostility, and the death it all implies but never shows us is all played for laughs. Crumbling buildings, near misses, and last stands all occur with perfect comedic timing. The thing is, the absurdity of statecraft, the absurdity of politics, the absurdity of hierarchy and blind compliance with it, then all lead to the absurdity of war. It isn't so much that the film is making light of war itself, it's that the film is giving war and its causes about as much respect as they deserve, which is to say absolutely none. It isn't much to say that war, or the victims of war, are to be laughed at, but the spirits which animate war definitely are. While this film has been out for 90 plus years now, not much has changed. Not only did the biggest war in human history occur less than a decade afterward, but countless wars and proxy wars since then. While it would be naive to expect a film to change anything, especially when the logic behind the state, the logic behind hierarchy, and the logic behind war are still only caricatured in this film, having these brief moments of laughter in between the gunfire feel awfully cathartic, don't they?